is one of the topics that I've been interested for the last 10 years. And when we talk about conservation and citizen science and biodiversity data, there is a lot of that being recorded and collected, but it's actually, there is something very different for mammals and insects and birds and fish. And there is, well, especially fish, but a lot of aquatic life, but especially fish. And that is that your size for fish, if you are fish, your size is often more important than the species that you are. Because, so for example, if you know, lions, let's say, eat zebras, but big zebras never eat small lions. So the nature, the relationships are not reversed, whereas in fish, it's different. If you are a small predator, you can actually get eaten by a big prey that is going to be your future prey. And so the size actually is an extremely important sort of information. And if we go to various biodiversity platforms and they only record what species have been caught, it doesn't tell us very much, because if a tuna is, I don't know, 1 meter long, or if a tuna is 1 millimeter long, that is actually a very different kind of species. That is a different species, even though you might identify it as with that species. So that's why for fish, it's extremely important to collect body size information. And this is what Fernando already mentioned, that we have unprecedented scale. There is a data revolution happening, and anglers are helping with that. Citizen science is helping with that. And scientists are trying to understand how to use this data in terms of catch and survival rates and tag recapture, reporting invasive species. But as I said, fish size is extremely important. And that is because fish size is very important for fish. As I said, it's more important than its species identity. It determines all sorts of recovery potential in the population, interactions, value for humans. And it's also affected by a lot of factors like fishing, temperature, food, predation. And so fish can vary in size massively. Size determines whether you eat or whether you will get eaten, and even small differences in size will have a different result. A very interesting recent research shows that traditionally we believe that, okay, I'll try to use this highlighter. Traditionally, can you see the highlighter? It has normally been assumed that the amount of eggs that a fish produces scales sort of linearly with its body size. So it's always, let's say, 10% of its body weight. And that's still used usually in fisheries. But the more data we collect, the more it turns out that it's actually not linear. It's sort of exponential. So in a way, this one big cod will produce almost 40 times more, even though it maybe weighs, I don't know, 10 times more. And so it has been estimated that a 30 kilogram of cod, one cod of 30 kilograms will produce the same number of eggs as 37 fish of 2 kilograms with a total weight of 74 kilograms. So actually, size and big fish are very important for populations. Big fish also often spawn over longer periods of time. They have more eggs and they have more reserves. And so let's say something happened and there is not enough food for larvae at this time. So population that consists of small fish, they will suffer. The ones that had big fish will have a higher chance to survive. But of course, size of fish, and when we talk about loving them and knowing them, it's amazing for people. Like, big fish are just beautiful. They are very interesting. Of course, people want to catch them like that, but simply also just observing and swimming with them is important. And also it's important to say that fisheries, nevertheless, are an essential and the only food source for a large number of people on Earth. And it is important for them not only because it's beautiful and so on, but because they need to live. And so their size is also important because it's important for population resilience and for recovery rates. But fish sizes are changing. That's been a topic of my research for the last 10 or so years. And one reason is that we are taking out all the big fish. There was a recent paper, which I haven't included now, that shows that basically all animals in the ocean above a certain size basically disappeared, including majority of the big fish. But also historical data shows how, so there is the study that shows the trophy hunting in Florida Keys. In 1958, we see fish are bigger than humans. They're a very proud champion of the competition. Then another round of proud champions in 1980s, where fish are sort of half-size the humans. And this is in 2007, champions of the competition. And these, in each case, people were very happy. They thought that they caught the biggest fish. And that shifting baselines, as you probably have heard, is extremely and especially powerful in the aquatic ecosystems, in the ocean conservation, because this is something underwater, that's something we don't see, and that's something we somehow don't remember. So there is another example here about the cod in the Baltic Sea, how not very long time ago, 1987, there is this photo of a person hugging lots of big cod. And this is a photo from 2 years ago, where not sure why, and it's actually not entirely clear. It's called zombie cod, how for some reason they are just not growing. They are small and they're suffering. They're full of parasites. The cod in the Baltic Sea has been completely collapsed, overfished. So yes, and they are not recovering. So yes, fishing is of course the first reason why sizes are changing. We are taking out all the biggest fish and we're leaving, if let's say size distribution in an fish population would look like that, with lots of big fish like this, in a fish population, it will become smaller and smaller, creating this so-called size deficit. Now, another reason why, so this is one of the citizen science programs that allows us to explore fish underwater, but I'm not actually going much deeper into that. Another reason why fish is changing is climate change. And you might have heard there was a lot of discussion that fish are shrinking because of climate. That's not necessarily so always clear, but it's clear that the temperature is changing fish sizes. Some of them, they seem to be getting bigger on average, others are smaller, but size is changing. So what can anglers and citizen science do about it? Well, just report the fish size that they see or that they catch. And either you do catch and release or you bring the fish home and eat it, because it can be a very sustainable source of protein and sort of local food. If you actually are not a vegetarian and you need some animal protein, that could work. And why to do it? Because when we have information about sizes, even small amount of information could be very useful, because we can already start applying these statistical methods to identify what is the most likely distribution in the population and what is the most likely size deficit in this population. And maybe we would find out that the situation is much better than we thought, but we need to know. And so that's why we are launching this Fish Size Project app very soon. And if any of you know anglers or people who would like to participate and test it and join this, this project, we need all hands on deck. And we are trying to encourage people to log observations, of course, anglers that catch fish, but also fish markets, if they are local, if we can identify species and place and size, that's already interesting. And hopefully more and more of underwater observations that we can actually also record. So a few screenshots. And so hopefully with all of this information, we can answer how much has the fish size changed? Species across the globe, what does it mean? And what can we actually do about it? So you can learn more about it on our website, which needs urgent update. There is more information coming on it now. So if it's not there yet, when you check it, come back in a few weeks. And thank you. Or I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Asta. It was great. Really interesting. So we will open now for questions. Lucas, Asta. Oh, it's me again.
No, no, no.
Hola, hola, hola.
I think no. Okay. So la señora de any question?
I would like to ask how much the size of the fish is. I don't know how to how this question. You know, when how it is enforced by, let's say, governments in regards to industrial fishing. I know.
Sorry, Fernando, you have to unmute because I can't hear the audience otherwise.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I would like to ask if this minimum size of fish that are, or the size of fish that are caught is somehow reflected in legislation, in industrial fisheries, and so on. You know, the more we know about the importance of the size for the recovery, success, and so on, if it's somehow reflected and enforced also.
Well, so traditionally, we only protect small fish somehow because there is a minimum legal landing size that fish has to reach. And that traditionally was aiming to protect fish so that they can reproduce at least once before they're being caught. But there is more and more evidence, but fisheries management is very conservative and it's very slow. So despite all of the evidence how big fish are important and that it would be good to protect them, this, to my knowledge, hasn't moved very much. In some places, in some way, you already get these upper size limits so that you cannot catch something above a certain size. It wouldn't be impossible to have something like a big fish exclusion devices for trawls or something like that, where you can only take intermediate sizes and sort of have like a dome-shaped selectivity. All of that would be possible if there was a will. As we know, at the moment, World Trade Organization is supposed to ban or hopefully ban the harmful fisheries subsidies, which is a huge topic and a huge problem for overfishing in the world. Let's see whether that's going to happen. So yeah, there should be a will, but I guess the ocean is a difficult one. But when we come to freshwater fisheries, where it is mostly people, and not even fisheries, freshwater fish, let's say, right, where it's to a large degree it's people. So here we can actually change behaviors, and as we know, behavior can change very quickly if there is a really strong force for that. And it's interesting that even though Lithuania doesn't have maximum size limits, a lot of anglers say that they actually release the big fish. And I have heard that if people share a catch on Facebook or something, that they're really big fish that they caught, and if it's obvious that they didn't release it, they get really demonized on Facebook. How dare you? Why are you doing this? So in a way, that attitude is there. People are realizing it. Also, big fish quite often is not so good to eat. That means, let's say, it's tough already and so on. So our hope is that maybe that's where we can have an impact. And that's where maybe we can, by talking about it more, then that's actually what can change. Much harder to change governmental subsidies and big companies in the open ocean.
Hello, Asta. I have a question about the app. I mean, do you think that it's intuitive enough that, for example, Czech anglers could use it? Because I have no idea about your language, how different it is from the Czech language. So would it be some potential even right now that Czech anglers could use it, your application?
Fernando, can you say it again? I couldn't understand.
Yeah, I can even respond it, but the question was like, will it be possible for Czech anglers to use the app already now? And Lucas was concerned about the language, that if it's in Lithuanian, but as I understand, it will be easy to translate, right?
Yes, yes, that's our goal. We need our champions in each country. Maybe Alka wants to be one, to help us adapt it to other countries. So, I mean, it's Lithuanian and English now. We are trying to build it in such a way that it would be easy to translate. You just translate a few things and then it automatically can switch. You choose the language, it can switch. And then, of course, the goal is to find out who are the stewards of the data in the country, right? If we are collecting data from the Czech Republic, who will get it and how will we manage it? So, of course, the anglers themselves, our goal is to give a report for each angler at the end of the year. Oh, that's your catch, that's and so on. And we'll have some general report on the website. But then it's some maybe perhaps local fisheries authorities or local communities or whatever it is who actually should also get the data in according to whatever data rules, anonymous or whatever it is the data is that actually should go. So that's the challenging part.
Maybe part of our future project.
Yes, fingers crossed, hopefully.
What are the functions now of the app? Like, does it recognize the species or just the size? And if there is already some feedback for the fishermen?
So could Katka ask if you could describe the functions of the app as it is right now, if it has the ability to recognize a species, for example, or if it gives already some information to the anglers?
It doesn't have an ability to recognize the species. That's one of our goals, but that's not necessarily that simple and fast. At the moment, it's mostly the goal of the app is for the anglers to have like their own diary if they record what they catch. And at least in Lithuania, we are also link it now with the weather information. So you basically have all your statistics, what you caught, where, and in what weather conditions, and so on. Or maybe what you observed, and then also a way, if you see a weird observation, you can share it with a scientific audience. You can say, I report some strange observation, then it goes to scientists. Is it a disease? Is it a new species? And you report it to a community so that you can make it public so other people can see it as well. And so it's mostly this way at the moment. So you contribute to science and you get your own sort of summary of activity.
Very good.
I would like to ask, do you also somehow record or publish the changes of environment under water? How it influences the fishes population? Do you also somehow taking data of the environment, not about just species, but environment?
Yeah. Should I repeat or?
Yes, thanks. Please repeat.
I think the question is if the app or the future plans for the app include the adding of other environmental variables, like to see how the environment is changing and how it affects the fish.
At the moment, not. Like it would be nice to have like a metaverse, an app for everything, but I mean, it just would be really, I think, too much and too hard. So, but there are other sources of information that you can get probably to observe. There's various monitoring studies of nitrogen and pollution, phosphorus and other things. So yes, once you have data, then you can start analyzing how it relates to other factors. But I think still the apps work if they are relatively focused. They have to have a sort of relatively simple goal and task. As if you start putting too much into them, then it just becomes too much.
Yeah, but I was more thinking not about the app, but more about sonar or some different equipment or different things that you can compare. Like let's say the number of species and actually what you see under the water, the environmental.
Yes, definitely. Well, so we don't have the underwater scans. We were talking with a company that it would be great to have them, but it's a huge project. It would be interesting for them as well. Like it's sort of hard to describe the immensity of this data and this project. So we sort of thinking it would be great. And yes, we could actually compare it to environmental change and habitat change and all sorts of things, but analyzing it all is would require quite some effort.
Thank you so much, Asta.
Thank you. Have a good meeting. I will say bye now, and nice to see all the faces.
Thank you for joining, and talk soon.
Yeah.